Okay, so what we decided to do first was to just give you a real-world example of how some virtual assistants are being actively engaged with their customers. So just a very short presentation by Pizza Hut and Hulu. And so we're going to start off with Matt.
Oh, Pizza Hut, I think first, actually.
You first?
Me first, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay. So yes, I'm Rhett Blanch. I'm the platform lead architect with Pizza Hut in Australia. So, and I'm going to tell you about the call steering application that we've been working with Inference Solutions to build to serve the Australian market. So a bit about Pizza Hut in Australia. So Pizza Hut is an iconic and beloved brand in Australia with 270 restaurants across the country. It's been in the country 50 years next year. So a lot of Australians, their first experience with home delivery was with Pizza Hut. So it sort of introduced the concept. But with that history comes some legacy. So legacy in operations and legacy in technology. And in 2016, the master franchise for Pizza Hut was sold to Allegro Funds, and they've gone on a multi-year program to transform the business operationally and technologically with the aim to increase revenue, improve customer service, and improve efficiencies for the franchisees. One of the things that we've been looking at is the customer service centre. So Pizza Hut runs a single national phone number in Australia, which aids the ability to do marketing campaigns at a national level. And the existing solution had a few challenges. So one of the key things was that it was legacy, and it was at the end of its life. So we were the last customer on the particular vendor's platform, so even they were keen for us to move off it. It was expensive. So phone-based orders are more expensive than doing a web-based order. Anything that we could do to improve the cost of the phone-based orders was something that would benefit the business. Reporting was also challenging. So we had reporting that could tell you how many customers had abandoned a call without making an order, but we had no real understanding of where they'd abandoned the call inside once the call had started. So that made it challenging for us to assess what was working and what wasn't working within the existing platform. The other thing was integration. So it essentially held its own data. So if we wanted to update some information relating to a store, we had to do it once for the website and once for the call center application. This was challenging because if we had an issue with a specific store, so they had some sort of equipment failure, or we had a tropical cyclone in one city, so we had to close all the stores at one point last year in that particular city, it meant having to update data in two separate locations, which was then a challenge to manage. And a lot of those updates, particularly around store trading zones, that required support from an external vendor as well. So we couldn't manage that ourselves. So what we did was we went to the market and we assessed a number of solutions, and we found that in terms of cost and capability, the Inference solution was the best for us in terms of providing a call steering application. So using the intelligent virtual agent technology from Inference, we were able to put together a solution that allowed customers to call up, and they could decide whether they wanted to pick up or get a delivery or answer some other questions. And that included being able to locate to a store. So communicating what the customer's address was, then using our APIs. The Inference solution provided an abstract layer which did call to text using Google's APIs and mapping APIs to return to the Pizza Hut APIs a latitude and longitude which we could pass to the Pizza Hut internal APIs to locate a store. The store information held by Pizza Hut is specific to trade zones around a store. Not nearly as neat as the one shown here, but it gives you an idea of how we take an address and map it to a particular trading zone around a store. So the implementation that we did with the APIs was really straightforward with the Inference solution. And so that has then allowed us to think about doing stuff more in the future with what we could do with our other APIs. So next, so in terms of benefits, provides us some cost efficiency both in call costs and contact center costs. It streamlines future calls, so subsequent calls from the same phone number are automatically routed through to the caller's preferred restaurant. They don't have to go through the location process again if they're going to go to have a delivery to the same address. The reporting is much more robust, so it can give on-demand reporting aggregates of customer interaction data. We get the utterances from the customer as well, so that helps in identifying any issues in the process flow. It allows us to do internal development. So Inference Studio, with its drag and drop interface, allowed the development team to implement the initial development really rapidly, and allowed us to get a prototype to our test users really, really quickly so that they could work out how, whether the customer experience was working, and then we tweaked it as the project went along to improve the experience. It also allowed us to move to a single API layer. So the store, we were able to utilize our internal store API so that we could use the same API for the web channel as well as the call center channel. And it also allowed us to manage the store data from a single point. So if there was an issue with the store in the future, it just needed to be updated once rather than in multiple locations. And it also enabled a lot of future innovation. So I think when we were doing it, we realized that we then had the skills and capability to do more. So the team was quite excited, and we had to write down a lot of the ideas so that we could come back to them once we'd done the initial project and see what we're going to do next. Yeah.
So, Matt. Sorry, Matt. You have a very different setup.
So I'm Matt Kravitz. I'm from Hulu. I'm the Director of Service Applications, and I'm really focused on the innovation and technology around the service experience. So I have 2 slides today. I'm going to give you a little bit about Hulu, and then I'll talk about the framework that we're thinking about the strategy and future around AI. So 3 numbers, because hopefully we have some familiarity with Hulu, but I'll give you 3 numbers that really are going to impact some of the interesting opportunities that we have. Hulu is 12 years old, which when you're really thinking about innovation and a roadmap is a great number. We're not even in our teens yet, which means in terms of service applications, really don't have a lot of tech debt. So very, very ripe for innovation. 48% is the year-over-year growth in 2018. So think about that. In a 12-year-old company, you're experiencing 48% year-over-year growth, which is great. Evidently, there's a lot of traction around cord cutting. The negative and the challenge in the service operation is that how do you deal with all that contact volume? So you can't just continue to hire more and more people. It really forces the conversation around self-service and deflection and innovation. 50% is really the blend at Hulu between us being a media company and a technology company. So the technology at Hulu in terms of our product is beautiful technology, a lot of UX design, a lot of innovation. So when we're looking in service operations, you have to almost be at parity. You really have to give a good personalized quality experience throughout the customer lifecycle. This is my second slide. This is the simple framework that we use. I sort of look at the analogy of a funnel. Think of all the hundreds of thousands of potential contacts we have each day. So through this unassisted strategy that we've created, we deflect around 95% of our contacts through these 4 simple technologies. Start with a SEO strategy and how you deal with Google search and how you can actually have problems resolved directly through Google search. If that doesn't deflect, we have a help site with a lot of personalization. We also have a peer-to-peer community Both these items will also deflect a tremendous amount of contacts and drive customer satisfaction. Lastly, we have our first experimentation around AI. We've had a chatbot for about a year and a half. We have a non-authenticated chatbot, and we also have an authenticated chatbot with a lot more personalization since we know who the viewer is. The second is a very traditional support, assisted support. So we have traditional chat, you have social through Facebook and Twitter. We have inbound telephony. We actually have our telephony provider here at Five9, which I'm also the CIO of as well, apparently. CTO, yeah. And we also provide callbacks. We provide them through the IVR. We call them through the help site. Where are we heading? So this is the future. This is sort of why we're all here, is we are now working with the next thought process. And what we're doing, instead of thinking through artificial intelligence, AI to Hulu really is around augmented intelligence. It's how do you take an agent, which we plan on having agents for a long time, and really arm them with better information. These are 4 of the sample projects that we're working on around augmented, what we're doing around real-time speech analytics. That's working with Five9, with Salesforce, and with Google through an architecture that through the voice channel, it's able to do speech to text, being able to do that transcription, which in itself is not really super helpful, but what it does do is enable the next 2 functions, which is next best action, that helps an agent around what to do next and what could be potentially a good offer or an action that they should take within a chat or phone experience. Suggested responses, terrific for chat. Also, you could use with speech-to-text transcription. And within the unassisted channel, this is where we're getting into conversational AI. I think these days through an IVR, people expect a more intelligent, responsive, personalized experience. And this is where we're heading, conversational AI, which again is going to help through positive self-deflection. So, back to the panel.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with Callan, and we have your customer here, and obviously he went through what typically we use for reasons for automation, which is reducing costs and improving customer service. So but rather than talk about Pizza Hut, I was wondering if you had some examples of the what and why to deploy a virtual assistant. Any good examples other than?
Yeah, so I mean, Inference Solutions has been in the intelligent virtual agent space pretty much since it started. I mean, we have hundreds of enterprise deployments around the world, and I think we've pretty much covered or have agents in pretty much every industry these days, whether it be business, whether it anywhere from big business and Fortune 50 and government agencies all the way down to SMB, and pretty much across every vertical, whether it be healthcare, finance, government, and so on. I think, if you're looking at where we're seeing traction, we see a lot of traction in retail space. We see a lot of traction in hospitality space. So if you were to look at, say, recent IVA projects that Inference has delivered, you'll see a lot of big hotel brands in that sort of, in that group. And what they're doing is building, virtual concierge services, front of house services, but well as back of house services where you see employee-based virtual agents. So I'm working for a large hotel chain, I'm walking down a corridor, I notice a flashing light bulb, and I can just ring in and say, hey, I need that fixed, and you're talking to a virtual agent to do that.
Is it fair to name names?
Well, we can name a few of them. For example, recently we just did an announcement with the Red Lion Hotel Group, which is 1,400 hotels across North America, spanning many, many brands. You ring into that hotel chain, you're going to get a front of house virtual agent that is answering your call, allows you to ask questions about the facility. How far are you from Disneyland? And do you have an airport shuttle? And can I bring my pets? And what are your policies around this? Things that would normally be handled by, or typically handled by, somebody behind the desk at that hotel. But in these sort of, these economic times where you're looking to sell that lead, you're looking to sell a booking. You're not looking to sell an FAQ to a franchise or a hotel owner or something like that. So there'd be a few examples there.
Okay. Same with you, because you have your customer sitting here. Different customer.
Yeah, different customer. So
pick one.
everyone hear me? Great. So actually, I think it's important to go back to what Matt talked about, and that there's really, when we say virtual assistant, there's 2 pretty different types of virtual assistant.
More than that.
Yeah, that's probably true. Very much more. But I think about it like, who are you assisting? You're either assisting the customer or you're assisting the agent. And what Matt talked about as augmented is effectively the assistant is helping the agent, is actually, both from a technology and a use cases perspective, quite significantly different from the previous one where the assistant is helping the customer. So I'll talk a little bit about the customer one, and then I'll mention, there's a lot to say about the assisting the agent, which is really interesting. When you assist the customer, actually, in my mind, I've broken it into two different use cases. And if you go look at what a contact center does today, typically it uses their IVR, their voice response system, to do different things. One is what's called in the business is segmentation, which is figuring out why did the customer call. And that helps you make a decision about like which agent do you want to route them. The second piece of it is to provide self-service, right? This is the classic deflection case where we allow them to do something on their own. And those are actually separate things. So you can actually think about using virtual assistants that help customers to do one or the other. The applications for the first one are actually wide. In general, like it's my belief that like in 5 years, if we still have press 1 for sales, 2 for support, like I need to like do something else. I mean, it's like there's no one left in the world that likes that. Instead, what should happen is obvious. Like you call up, if you end up calling Hulu because you haven't managed to get your answer, should I like, thank you for calling Hulu, how can I help you today? And then what happens from there, actually, that's the segmentation process. And it turns out that's also a somewhat easier natural language processing problem to solve. It's super relevant to how you apply these technologies. And if the customer says, yeah, I'd like to reset my password, deflection, and then it goes to a more specialized voice bot. So that actually, by the way, is one of the leading cases we hear. In the many conversations I've had with customers, not specifically Hulu, but in general, like huge amounts of your voice calls are still like, I can't log into the website. I mean, like, and nobody wants those things to hit agents. So these are low-hanging fruit deflection use cases. But if the customer says, hey, I'm about to cancel my subscription for me and my entire neighborhood, I need to speak to someone right now, and that should probably go to a person. Person is probably good for that. So you're still using the assistant to segment, but you're using a human being to handle the case. So that's sort of what we think about there. On the agent assistant side, there's a much, much richer set of use cases there that are almost always very vertical, whether they're, and Matt again talked a little bit about a high level about next best action, suggesting knowledge base articles is one of the things also that we demonstrated together jointly at Google Next, is that customer speaking to the agent. And today what happens a lot is the agent, customer says, hey, I have a question, how do I do X, right? How do I reset my cable box? It's not a Hulu issue. How do I reset my cable box, right? So instead of if the agent doesn't know, they'll typically, oh, thank you, hold on a sec, let me find out. They put you on hold, then the agent goes and Googles their internal database effectively to get the answer. So instead the assistant can be hearing what the customer said, and when they hear reset my cable box, they can service relevant articles. So that's an example of a use case on the agent assistant side.
Yeah, just to kind of, not a whole bunch to build off of, so thank you guys. But I kind of have a similar perspective that, we're seeing a lot of success with the deployment of bots in, I think, we've got to think of it in two ways. One is from an external capacity in the way you're helping your customers, but what we're also seeing a lot of interesting applications of is internal productivity. And it could be productivity, could be around where you're doing agent assistance or helping the agent. But then also if you think of employees, increasingly a lot of organizations really want to differentiate in terms of like the employee experience and want to bring that consumer experience even in-house for their employees. So think about IT and HR benefits. All of these are prime moments where there's a lot of repetitive things. It happens when the fixed times of the year, a new employee onboarding. So those are also really ripe opportunities where we're seeing the deployment of AI and automation and chatbots inside of an organization. Outside, I kind of agree with both Jonathan and also Callan here that there's a lot of opportunity in retail. We're seeing, a couple of examples. We talked about Dyson. If you were attending a previous couple of sessions, they have a lot of seasonality in terms of purchase. Think about Black Friday, Cyber Monday. you can't really scale up human agent staffing to match up those kinds of peaks of demand, and you shouldn't have to. There is a lot of value in being able to provide self-service. Customers don't want to pick up the phone and call up. Increasingly, if you ask millennials, like they want to use digital channels, they want to self-serve, and it's just about how do you be present in the channels that they want you to be on. And then there's also other really interesting use cases, even if you think outside of retail, and retail, of course, lots of top brands like North Face, Dyson are some of our customers. But then also thinking about, ways we can impact society in a better way. We had Planned Parenthood talk about, who are also a customer of ours, talk about their chatbot Roo that is helping teenagers learn better about their bodies and sexual education in a very safe way, where they're not it's a judgment-free zone, being able to talk with someone that is really impartial in terms of advice. So I think it's really interesting where you're seeing this broad swath of applications, whether it's to acquire a customer, help them convert a sale, or it could be from a point of view of providing 24/7 support, and then also spreading all the way into your agents and your employees inside of your organization. So I think this is just ripe. There's so much opportunity, and so many different use cases where customers have actually deployed chatbots today.
Okay, so I think the what and the why I think is really important, because a lot of times people will deploy technology for technology's sake, which is a mistake sometimes. But I want to pivot to what kind of feedback you're getting and what kind of results. So you both talked about your implementation, so I'm going to go back to both of you first. But what kind of, everybody puts these great stats up here about, well, we increased CSAT by 100%. So what did you see, for example, when you deployed?
I can't give you specific numbers, but yep.
Or feedback.
But we've had positive feedback on the improvement to the application, and it's certainly we're seeing the numbers that it's locating the addresses correctly and sending the customers to the right store, which is good, and it's addressed some of the. We had concerns early on, and it's one of the things in building these things is addressing some stakeholder concerns. So it's certainly in implementation and in action address those concerns as well. And so no, it's been a positive change for Pizza Hut. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about the chatbot and Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, me too.
And learning a few things is exciting. The good news is that we are on the verge of breaking double digits with deflection in the chatbot. We still have a lot of people entering into the chatbot that ends up transferring over to an agent. So I think really, really accurately, the biggest challenge we're having is accurately assessing each state of the chatbot experience, because you have to know who entered into the chatbot experience, who's in the middle of a chatbot, because your workforce management team has to monitor, we get a couple thousand chatbots a day, so that's sort of flowing into the queue, the traditional chat queue. So you need to understand if people just close the box, is that a positive deflection, a negative deflection, is that abandonment? So and a lot of these tools don't really give you that accurate statusing. So for us, it's we've done a decent amount of custom code. We use Salesforce to be able to the best of our ability, to track where people are, and it's been very positive. But our goal is just to not negatively impact customer satisfaction. Mm-hmm. And we've really put a lot of energy about the tone of voice of the bot, and being humble and being transparent around that. Right underneath our bot button, it says, I'm still learning. I'm a young bot, and it's sort of nice to let people know. Listen, we had the word beta next to our bot for a year. So I think it's about being humble and letting your customers know that I'm not attempting that I know everything, but I just don't want to negatively impact your experience, and we've been very successful in that.
I really like that, because we also talk about, when do you tell people when it's a bot, and being transparent?
Right away.
And right away, yeah.
What do you think?
Still a young bot is good.
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's mandatory now.
Mandatory,
yeah, in California.
Oh, it is
July
mandatory.
1st. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we find that you have to tread that line very carefully. You don't want to you don't want to be interacting with someone with the impression that they think you are a person, because you get into that sort of uncanny valley where it's sort of, this is just weird. And it's just much easier to be front and center that I'm a virtual agent, I can help you with all sorts of things. At any time you can get out of this experience and get to a live agent, but I'm going to prove to you here that it's useful to talk to me because I can help you with lots of things. So yeah, I mean, one of the things that was raised there is the sort of this learning process. And if you go back, and we've talked about old world kind of IVR technologies like press 1, press 2, DTMF and all of that sort of stuff. It used to be that when you got to the point of deployment, that was the end of the project. But now getting to the deployment, you're not even halfway, because you now get into the training process. You get into this maturity curve where your IVA or your chatbot or whatever it might be is going to be learning very, very quickly based on the data that you're getting. And we'd like to talk about a sort of a 30, 60, 90-day maturity curve as being the minimum expectation that you should have in terms of at what point is it going to start delivering real value for you.
And I actually like to sort of come back to something Matt said, because I think it's super important, is customer satisfaction. Like how much did we increase customer satisfaction? And this is linked to something I'm calling the costs of inaccuracy. And it's one of the not often enough talked about problems with AI, and it's super relevant to how you use these things in the contact center. And that is, no machine learning system is 100% accurate, not a single one. And so there is a 100% chance that some of your users will connect to your AI thing and the wrong thing will happen. And you have to think about that ahead of time and think about okay, well, what is the implication of that for me? And that helps educate, for example, on voice assistants, what types of calls you choose to deflect, right? Because, are you willing, and by the way, just to give a number so people know, speech recognition accuracy, which is easier to measure, is in the best case, 92% for a general ASR engine like Google or IBM or whatever, and it can be better for super custom tune, and it only goes down from 92%. Yeah. Depending on your use case, it'll be terrible. And so what happens, if that's 10%, let's say, 10% of your calls, the wrong thing happens, what's the result of that? And so you have to think carefully about what use cases can you deflect. Are they complicated enough that you're not confident that you're not going to hurt the customer satisfaction? And so with IVAs, you have to be super, super careful. The interesting thing to me, and I think why we're seeing a lot of interest on the agent assistant side, is that is not a problem. And that I think is fascinating.
Any help is good help.
Any help is good help.
Yeah.
If I walked into a contact center, hey Matt, I can sell you a solution that takes 3 minutes off of every agent interaction half the time. Would you buy that? He'd be like, yeah, sign me up. If I walked in and said your speech recognition engine is accurate 50% of the time in your voice bot, what do you think? He'll be like, get out. So it's a huge difference,
That's a good point, yeah.
right? In that every inaccuracy is ignored by the agent, but it helps when it works. And so you have a different risk-reward trade-off on the agent assistant side versus the customer assistant side. And I'll end with another interesting data point. Again, on speech recognition, because I've been spending a lot of time on this particular thing lately with some of our data scientists, is I said 90% in the best case. Well, the best case, to be clear, is a human being reading a piece of written text in normal English without any background noise, using a wideband encoded audio stream. That's where you get 92%. You might imagine, okay, what happens if I have an agent and a customer talking back and forth? It's a human-to-human conversation. One person's on a mobile phone with background noise in San Francisco, and the agent has a thick accent. And by the way, they mumble and and whatever. Is that 90%? In fact, human beings don't even hit 90%. If you were to put a audio transcription of a call like this in front of humans and ask them to write it down, they won't do 90% for the use case I just described. So do you think a bot will do better than 90? So these are the kind of things you have to worry about. And we're seeing accuracies for that case various are far lower. So this gets back to I'm being a little negative, but these are practical considerations that you have to think about. It's not all this rosy, I'm going to throw an IVA in and I'll deflect 100% of my calls tomorrow by clicking go. No.
I mean, I think to that point, if you just go back a few years, the the amount of time it would take to get to the point where you were interacting with an IVA was considerable. Yeah. So you would have to sign off on a business case that was many hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we routinely worked on multi-million-dollar kind of projects where there was nothing to talk to or chat to for months. Yeah. That has really changed dramatically. I mean, the mantra that we use internally with the Inference Studio platform now is that a customer prospect should be able to get an account, have an idea, build that, and talk to it in 5 minutes or less. So you're getting to the point where you are experiencing the IVA experience in almost no time. And that, to go to your point around, how's it going to perform in this sort of environment, how it's going to perform in the car, on a speakerphone, and all of this sort of stuff, go and find out, because you can now build something that you're talking to so quickly, you can try it in all these things. And we find, and hopefully Pizza Hut found this as well, that when you get to the point where you're engaging with something that you have built and you're taking it around to your stakeholders within your company, that it really changes the nature of the discussion, and it becomes what is possible and where should we use it, and perhaps where we shouldn't use it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to get back quickly, and I'm going to start with you, because 2 questions now, because you brought up a negative, and we're also looking at the positive. What positive results have you seen, and then also kind of what lessons learned? Because I agree with you. Get it out there and start learning, because until you start playing with it, you don't even know, let alone what your customers are going to surprise you with.
Yeah, so some of the positive results, I think one of the very interesting use cases we saw was that by deploying a pretty well-trained AI or a chatbot, organizations were able to basically convert from becoming a cost center. A lot of contact centers are viewed as cost centers. They actually were able to become a profit center, where their use case was a little broader. So they were doing obviously post-purchase service and support, but they were also now able to free up some of the agents to assist with purchase assistance, or to actually help customers convert through your funnel. So that was a very big win for one of our brands. That was interesting. The other, I think, really interesting win that again, I think goes back to also what Matt mentioned earlier was, a lot of organizations spend a lot of time building the perfect bot, but reality is, something will go wrong, something will fail. But it's really important that you don't not focus also on the analytics that are part of that. A lot of people spend a lot of resources upfront, but then they kind of run out of steam when it comes to, okay, I want to be able to measure this on an ongoing basis. And I think there's a real opportunity there, because nothing's static in your business, right? Your business is going to change. There's going to be some seasonality. There's going to be some event that happens. And if you don't have good analytics that can help surface some of those other opportunities, where maybe you're detecting some massive failure that's happening if you're a service provider, or maybe a shift in trends of like user preferences, that's a lost opportunity. And with good analytics and being able to do this in a way that's very visual, I think is really crucial. That's something that we really focus very heavily on, is being able to analyze and look at not just the leading indicators like CSAT or deflection rate, but also being able to drill down into what are the actual topics that people are asking most frequently, and where are the opportunities where you can like further drive self-service, because even if it's something where you create a very seamless way to, in case someone goes to a bot and then goes to an agent, you still kind of elongated that whole interaction with you as a company, as opposed to if they were to first just call up and get the answer from a human being. So I think there are real opportunities to keep pushing harder and keep looking for more ways by which we took the effort away from the customer and gave them that right answer, or the best experience the first time.
One of the areas that I haven't seen any research done on yet, but I expect we will see, is the satisfaction of agents within the call center pre and post bot deployment or IVA deployment. So, you come in on a Monday morning, you work in a contact center. Password reset, password reset, password reset, password reset. Do you really want another password reset call? No, you don't. You don't want any password reset calls. And so if suddenly all of those go away, and you're able to spend, say, more time on higher, harder problems, or problems that require, say, more empathy with the customer or the caller, how do you feel about your job, and how does the churn within the actual agent pool within the contact center itself change over time? I don't think we've really seen any data on that yet, but I would imagine we will see.
Individual use cases, but none that come to mind, that. Yeah, I have seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the role of the contact center agent is also, it's an opportunity for us to elevate their role, right? I mean, you think about contact center agents, you know, typically it's that first job for a lot of people. And that's why you see the churn and burn is like their jobs get so mundane and repetitive. And that's the reason why. But if you empower them, and that's actually an interesting point where, you know, even if you think about agent assistance, now you can think about moments where agents could actually raise the hand, hey, why didn't the bot answer this question? You know, 5 times out of 10 during the day, I'm answering this on a repeated basis. Let me suggest this as something that you know we want the bot to be trained with. So you kind of get that virtuous loop of like self-learning, and I think it's important that it's supervised learning. You know, I don't think unsupervised learning is yet prime, where you know you can just get every single agent, maybe a newbie, immediately providing a bot-trained answer for everyone. But it does create a lot of value in being able to have that kind of workflow where it's also feedback loop from your agents.
Yeah, we talk a lot about workforce engagement management, and that was one of the things, that one part of empowerment that's kind of understated is the fact that not only do you get to work on better things, right, but when you start making suggestions based on seeing that, then you feel like you're contributing to the organization, and you get that loop with the humans as well.
Yep.
Yeah, we have an interesting story around employee engagement, which is a major metric that management is focused on. We have surveys that go around for employee engagement. So when we proposed to operations a lot of the technologies that we're going to work on, the common theme is reducing seconds, right, and reducing average call time and average handle time. As an agent, that could actually be pretty scary, because if you drop average call time from 10 minutes to 6 minutes, what it means is you're taking so many more calls per day. That's scary.
Yep.
So what we've proposed, and has really created great enthusiasm around our AI strategy, is we'll split the time with you. So what we're doing is we're increasing the after call work from 45 seconds, and every project that we get that's carving a minute, you'll get 30 seconds back. So average, you know, after call work allows you to take a breath and to stand up. And I think that really is how you're introducing the concept of the ethics of AI. And I think that's really been a powerful realization for us.
I think that's the first I've ever heard that. I like that. I'll keep that.
Yeah,
Use it.
and I'll add one more thing on that as well, which is, you know, another reason I get really excited by agent assistance as well, is that what it does is it can also take away a lot of the mundane for the agent. Because that's all the stuff that you can automate and present. And I gave an example of, like, you know, let me go look up that article for you or whatever. That's like, brutal. Okay, here we go, whatever. And if an AI can hear that or do things on their behalf and automate tasks that are mundane, what it leaves the agent to do is to play the role of the human being in the engagement, right? To express empathy. And the way we think about it too is, like, if you focus on the end customer, you know, what's best for the end customer? And a lot of times, if they actually do pick up the phone and decide to call, it's probably because a lot of the self-help stuff hasn't worked out. You know, the best thing for them is probably to have a combination of man and machine, right? The human brings the heart and the machine brings the mastery. And when you bring those things together, that's great. And frankly, no machine can ever provide the empathy or the, you know, the voice, yeah, I hear you, you know, that really stinks, I'm so sorry. When you get an agent that's like that, that's a great experience, and no machine will ever do that.
You know, we're like 30 seconds away from letting these people loose. Any follow-up thoughts any of you have? You're going to run too.
Yeah.
Okay then.
Great,
Well,
right on time.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you for
all.
coming.
We think we have cocktails now for everyone.